The Dark Scrolls. Hey everyone, welcome back. Tonight, dim the lights, slip on your headphones, because we're stepping into a story that will make you never take modern medicine for granted again. Before we begin, hit that like button if this is your kind of history, the dark kind, the hidden kind, the kind that makes you rethink everything you thought you knew. And do me a favor, tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are, and where in the world are you watching from? I absolutely love seeing our little midnight community scattered across different cities and time zones. It's wild and kind of beautiful, watching these stories echo out into the world at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., or even later. Now, settle in. Turn on a fan if that helps you focus. Let the room get quiet. Because what happened to Jane Seymour in October 1537 isn't the gentle fairy tale your schoolbook told you. It's darker, it's bloodier, and it's so much worse. October 12th, 1537. Hampton Court Palace. A son is born. Church bells explode across London. Cannons thunder from the tower. Bonfires flare along the Thames. After years of waiting, England finally has a male heir. But in a sealed chamber on the second floor of Hampton Court, Jane Seymour is not celebrating. She can't move. She can't speak. She can barely breathe. The birth has gone catastrophically wrong. No one has told the king yet, and in just 12 days, Jane will be dead. What's worse, she didn't die peacefully, the way later portraits would have you believe. She died screaming. She died while infection ate its way through her body. She died while Henry VIII threw celebrations 3 floors below her chambers. And the most unforgivable part is that Jane Seymour didn't have to die. Rewind to 1536. Anne Boleyn is running out of time. She has given Henry a daughter, Elizabeth, whom he barely acknowledges. Then come the miscarriages, the stillbirths, the whispered gossip, the political tension. Henry is already eyeing a replacement, and standing in the corner of Anne's own chambers, quiet, pale, obedient, is Jane Seymour. A nobody, plain-faced, soft-spoken, forgettable to anyone not paying attention, but she is watching everything. The Spanish ambassador, Eustace Chapuis, writes in April 1536, "She is of middle stature and no great beauty, so fair she may be called rather pale." Translation, unremarkable. And that was exactly why she was dangerous. Jane had a weapon more potent than beauty: invisibility. She knew how to disappear into the background, how to answer without answering, how to smile just enough, but never too much, how to make powerful men think she had no thoughts of her own. Anne was fire, Jane was mist, and Henry, exhausted by fire, wanted mist. Thomas Cromwell saw the opportunity. He guided Jane, positioned her, coached her, directed her like a piece on a chessboard. On April 18th, 1536, Henry sent Jane a letter along with a purse of gold sovereigns. Jane sent it back. Not because she was virtuous, but because she was strategic. She replied, and this is recorded in Chapuis's dispatches, that she could not accept such gifts, for she had no greater treasure than her honor. The message was perfect. Anne would have taken the gold with a biting joke. Catherine would have accepted it with dignity. Jane refused it with calculated modesty, giving Henry exactly what he longed for. The illusion of a woman so pure she made him feel moral. Henry became obsessed. May 2nd, 1536, Anne Boleyn is arrested. Jane does not appear at court that day. She doesn't need to. She has already won. 19 days later, Anne's head falls from the scaffold. Her body is still warm when Henry declares his engagement to Jane. 11 days after the execution, Henry marries her. Jane steps directly into Anne's bed, Anne's chambers, Anne's jewelry, Anne's daily life. Whether she feels guilt, no one knows. What we do know is that Jane understands survival better than anyone. In Henry's world, love is irrelevant. Obedience is everything. Picture Jane in her first nights as queen in June 1536. She lies awake in a cold royal bed while Henry sleeps elsewhere. She is newly married, newly crowned, and she is doing math. Catherine, discarded after 24 years. Anne, executed after 3. Jane, newly risen, but for how long? She knows the rules. To survive, she must give Henry a son, and she must give him one quickly. The moment Henry loses interest, the moment she fails, she dies, socially or literally. Jane isn't naive. She saw Catherine abandoned. She saw Anne go from beloved to accused to executed in less than a month. She knows what happens to wives who disappoint the king. So she tries. Month after month, she attempts to conceive. Nothing happens. Henry begins to grow impatient, because Henry always grows impatient. Whispers begin circulating through the court. Maybe Jane is barren. Maybe God is punishing Henry again. Maybe the king should look elsewhere. Every month without pregnancy feels like a countdown toward disaster. Finally, in early 1537, Jane becomes pregnant. The court exhales. Henry brightens. Ministers relax. But Jane knows the truth. Henry doesn't love her. He loves the idea growing inside her. She is not a wife. She is a vessel. And if that vessel cracks, if she miscarries, if she delivers a daughter, if anything goes wrong, her fate will be Catherine's slow exile or Anne's quick execution. As her pregnancy progresses, Jane is moved into confinement at Hampton Court. This is partly tradition and partly strategy. If something goes wrong, bad news can be contained, concealed, controlled. Jane becomes an incubator behind palace walls. By October, she is swollen, uncomfortable, frightened. Physicians examine her constantly, pressing on her belly with unwashed hands. No understanding of germs, bacteria, sanitation, just touching and unknowingly planting the infection that will kill her. Jane doesn't know that. She only knows that soon everything will be decided. Soon she will either succeed or fail. Soon she will live or die. October 9th, 1537. Labor begins. Jane feels the first contractions in the evening. Mild at first, the kind that make the attendants smile encouragingly and tell her to walk around the room. She does. Slow circles around the heavy tapestries that cover every wall. The birthing chamber is sealed, dark and stifling, exactly as tradition demands. No fresh air, windows covered, curtains drawn. The room is thick with heat, incense, sweat, and whispered prayers. The fire blazes because Tudor medicine insists warmth makes birth easier, but really it only turns the chamber into a suffocating oven. This is the room where Jane will either succeed as queen or fail as a woman in Henry's eyes. And it is the room that will kill her. Hours pass. The contractions intensify. Jane walks until she can't. Then she squats. Then she grips the birthing chair, a wooden seat with a large hole cut through the center so the baby can drop down by gravity. Female attendants fan her, wipe her forehead, whisper comfort from a lifetime of superstition, not science. They have no tools, no knowledge, no anesthesia, no hygiene, only tradition and prayer. The contractions grow stronger, sharper. Jane's breath becomes shallow, ragged. Her nightgown clings to her back with sweat. She bites her lip until it bleeds. By midnight, the pain is heavy enough that Jane cannot speak during contractions. She squeezes the arm of her closest attendant, her knuckles white, but she tries to stay composed. Queens do not scream. Queens endure silently. Queens are watched. Morning comes, October 10th. Jane has been in labor for 8 hours. Her hair is plastered to her temples. She cannot eat. She can barely sip wine. The contractions are stronger now, closer together. But something is wrong. Edward is not moving downward. The midwives exchange glances. They tell Jane to breathe, to rest, to stand, to sit, to kneel. Jane obeys everything, because what else can she do? Every second she isn't progressing is a step closer to danger. She knows this. As the hours crawl on, the midwives decide to examine her. They wash nothing. They scrub nothing. They simply reach inside her with bare, unwashed hands, feeling for the baby's position. Edward is head down. Good. But he is not descending. Jane cries out as fingers push, pull, press against tender, swollen tissue. The midwives try to adjust the baby's angle manually. Jane screams. They try again. More screams. Each examination introduces more bacteria into her body, though no one has any idea. Evening falls. The midwives whisper among themselves. This should have progressed by now. They check her again. Edward is still stuck. Jane hasn't slept in almost 24 hours. She begs for rest, but the contractions give her no mercy. They come relentlessly, wave after wave, leaving her trembling and half-conscious. Another night passes in agony. October 11th, day 3 of labor. By now, Jane is nearly delirious. Her eyes unfocused, her voice hoarse from crying out, despite trying to stay quiet. The room is hotter than ever, trapping the smell of sweat, blood, incense, and fear. The midwives have exhausted every tool they know: repositioning, squatting, walking, prayer. Nothing works. Jane's body is failing. She slumps sideways when a contraction ends, barely conscious between them. Finally, someone sends for the physicians. They arrive with grim faces. While the midwives stand back, the king's doctors, men who weren't allowed in the room until now, enter the chamber. They examine Jane with the same unwashed method, pushing their hands inside her, making her scream and thrash and beg. They mutter to each other. Obstructed labor. The baby is too large. Jane's pelvis is too small. This will not resolve on its own. They know the options. None of them are good. Option 1. Wait and hope. Let Jane continue labor until her uterus ruptures, killing both her and the baby. Option 2. Perform a craniotomy. Crush the baby's skull with hooks and pull it out in pieces. This would save the mother, but kill the child. Option 3. Use forceps and brute force to pull the baby out intact. This will severely tear the mother, possibly fatally, but may save the child. Option 4. Caesarean section. In 1537, this is not a real option. A C-section means certain death for the mother. They send word to Henry. The question is simple: which life matters more? The answer returns quickly: save the baby, whatever it takes. So they choose the only option that can deliver a living heir: forceps. Jane is barely conscious when they begin. She is laid back, held down by attendants. Someone gives her wine to numb the pain. Someone else presses a leather strap into her hand to bite. She curls her fingers around it weakly. She tries to breathe. She tries to pray. The physicians bring out the instruments: heavy, cold iron forceps designed to clamp around a baby's skull. They insert the metal inside her. The scraping of iron against swollen, torn tissue makes Jane scream with a sound that attendants describe as inhuman. 2 women hold her shoulders down. Another holds her legs. The physician grips Edward's head with the forceps and pulls. Jane's body tears. Blood pours onto the sheets, onto the floor. She screams until her voice breaks. Then she simply opens her mouth with no sound coming out. The doctor pulls again. More tearing, more blood. Jane slips in and out of consciousness. Finally, after unbearable minutes, Edward's head emerges. Then his shoulders. Then the rest of his tiny body. Edward VI is born alive. The midwives rush him away immediately. They clean him, wrap him in linen. His cry fills the room, a sound that will be celebrated across England for generations. Jane, meanwhile, is hemorrhaging. Her body has been torn apart internally and externally. The physicians shove cloth inside her to slow the bleeding. They stitch what they can, roughly, without anesthesia, without precision. Jane drifts into unconsciousness. When she wakes, Edward is gone. She has not seen him. He is already being presented to Henry, already being hailed as a miracle. No one tells Jane any details. No one brings her comfort. No one explains the damage done to her body. She is left alone in a room soaked with her own blood, with torn tissues, with sweat cooling on her skin, with her swollen abdomen throbbing in pain. She doesn't yet know that the infection has already begun. She doesn't know that in 12 days it will kill her. All she knows is that the worst pain of her life is over, and that the real horror hasn't even started yet. When Jane wakes after the delivery, the room is dim, silent, and suffocating. Her body feels torn apart, hollowed out, as if something essential has been ripped from her. Not only the child, but parts of herself she will never get back. Her abdomen throbs with a deep, burning ache. The sheets beneath her are stiff with dried blood. Her mouth is dry. Her skin is cold, despite the sweltering air trapped behind the shut windows and heavy tapestries. She blinks slowly, trying to remember where she is, why everything hurts so much. Then it comes back. The labor, the forceps, the tearing, the screaming. And Edward, the child who has already been taken from her arms. She asks softly, barely a whisper, where her baby is. No one gives her a clear answer. The attendants tell her he is well, that he is with the wet nurse, that he is being presented to the king. They do not bring him to her. They do not let her hold him. She is alone in the aftermath of the most traumatic moment of her life, and she doesn't realize that the danger isn't over. It has only shifted shape. Inside Jane's body in the torn tissues where the placenta detached, in the lacerations caused by the forceps, in the blood-soaked cloths packed into her to stop the bleeding, bacteria are already beginning to multiply. The unwashed hands, the contaminated instruments, the stifling chamber with no fresh air, all of it has created the perfect environment for infection. But Jane doesn't know. No one knows. The physicians believe she simply needs rest. October 13th. London is celebrating wildly. Bells ring non-stop. Cannons thunder. Crowds dance in the streets, drinking and shouting in joy, because England finally has a male heir. Bonfires burn across the city. Henry orders prayers of thanksgiving in every church throughout the kingdom. At Hampton Court, the court feasts. The palace glows with music and laughter, spilling from every hall. Henry beams and boasts that God has blessed him at last. Ministers congratulate him. Courtiers flatter him. Servants race back and forth, preparing endless festivities. Meanwhile, Jane lies in her chamber, shivering with fever. At first it is mild, a slight warmth along her forehead, a tremor in her hands. Easy to overlook. The attendants believe it is exhaustion from labor. They bring her broth and wine. They draw the curtains tighter. They encourage her to rest. But the fever climbs, slowly, steadily. October 14th. Henry hosts another celebration, even grander than the day before. Musicians play, dancers whirl. The great hall fills with the glow of torches and the smell of roasted meat. Everyone is celebrating the prince. Everyone except Jane. Her fever has now risen sharply. She shivers uncontrollably, even though the chamber remains suffocatingly hot. The attendants change her linens twice, then 3 times. Sweat pours from her skin, soaking through her gown. Her abdomen has begun to ache in a new, sharp, stabbing way. Not the soreness of childbirth, but something deeper, something wrong. The physicians are summoned. Dr. William Butts examines her, pressing along her abdomen. Jane cries out sharply. Her belly is tender, swollen, hot to the touch. The signs are all there, though the doctors in 1537 cannot interpret them. Infection is taking hold. Dr. Butts notes concern. He does not take action. He does not change her treatment. He simply instructs the attendants to continue watching her. In another wing of the palace, Henry laughs with courtiers and accepts congratulations as if nothing at all is wrong. October 15th. The fever spikes to 103 degrees. Jane is drenched in sweat, her hair plastered to her temples, her cheeks flushed with a deep, unnatural red. Her breathing is shallow, her pulse races. The swelling in her abdomen worsens. She cries out when touched. She moans in her sleep. Her throat is dry. Her mouth cracks from thirst even as she struggles to drink. The attendants are frightened now. They send for the physicians again. The doctors arrive, examine her, whisper to one another. Their answer is a standard treatment. They decide to perform bloodletting. They open a vein in Jane's arm and drain a bowl of blood from her body, believing they are drawing out the bad humors causing her fever. In reality, Jane is already dangerously weak from the hemorrhage after childbirth. Removing more blood only pushes her closer to the edge. She grows paler. Her pulse quickens. Her lips turn dry and faintly blue. The infection spreads through her bloodstream, but no one recognizes sepsis for what it is. October 16th. Jane is delirious. She mumbles incoherently. Sometimes she calls for her baby. Sometimes she calls for her mother. Sometimes she cries out for mercy, for God, for help that never arrives. She does not know where she is. Her eyes flutter open and closed without recognition. The sheets beneath her are soaked and must be changed repeatedly. The room is filled with the sour, sickly smell of fever and infection. The physicians arrive again, press on her abdomen again, and Jane shrieks. They do not know what to do. There are no antibiotics, no antiseptics, no understanding of microbial infection. All they know is prayer, bloodletting, superstition, and resignation. They instruct the attendants to continue watching her and to pray more earnestly. In the great hall, Henry continues his celebrations. Foreign ambassadors join him. Musicians play late into the night. The court glows with life and excitement, while Jane fights for her own, unseen and unheard. The infection continues its relentless spread through her body. October 17th. Jane's condition worsens dramatically. Her urine is scant and dark, a sign that her kidneys are beginning to fail. Her breathing becomes more rapid. Her skin feels both burning hot, oddly cold at the extremities. Her face turns pale, except for 2 bright fever spots on her cheeks. She complains that her abdomen feels like it's burning from the inside. She slips in and out of consciousness. Everyone in her chamber realizes she is dying. But the court cannot stop. Preparations are underway for the christening. England has a prince, and the ceremony must be magnificent. Whether the Queen lives long enough to see it is secondary. Jane is told nothing. She is too weak to ask. October 18th arrives, and with it the court's unwavering demand. The Queen must attend the christening. Attendants lift Jane's frail, fever-stricken body onto a litter. She cries out in pain with every movement, but they cannot stop. The ceremony is a spectacle of the nation, and the Queen's presence, symbolic or not, is required. They carry her through the palace corridors, her head rolling limply to the side, her hands trembling. They place her in an observation chamber adjacent to the chapel royal, propping her up with pillows. She stares blankly ahead, unable to focus. Her breathing is ragged. The christening proceeds with grandeur. Princess Mary stands as godmother. Little Elizabeth carries the robe. The Archbishop presides. The court admires the infant prince. Henry beams proudly. Jane is a faint shadow watching from a distance, present in body, but gone in mind. When the ceremony ends, the attendants carry her back. The journey drains whatever strength she had left. Her fever spikes again. Jane's final decline is beginning. October 19th. Jane is barely conscious now. She drifts in and out of a fever dream, her mind floating somewhere between reality and a place she cannot describe. When her eyes do open, they stare past faces she should recognize, but no longer does. Her breath comes in short, shallow gasps. Her abdomen is swollen and burning hot to the touch. Each time an attendant gently moves the blankets or adjusts her pillows, Jane cries out in pain. Her voice is so weak, it barely rises above a whisper. Her skin is slick with sweat. Her nightgown is soaked through again and again, until the attendants run out of clean linens. Her pulse flutters like a trapped bird under her skin. Her hands tremble. Her lips are pale and cracked. She tries to speak once, tries to ask for something, no one knows what, but the words dissolve on her tongue. The fever has taken her mind hostage. She mumbles nonsense, calls out to people who aren't there, reaches for things she cannot grasp. Sometimes she thinks she is still in labor, still trapped in the moment of tearing pain. She grips the sheets as if bracing for another contraction. Other times, she seems to understand she is dying, her eyes filling with a distant, childlike terror. Henry is told of her worsening condition. His reply is simple: more prayers. God will decide. The king does not come to see her. October 20th. The fever has tightened its grip. Jane's breathing becomes faster, but each breath seems to bring less air. Her chest rises and falls rapidly. Her lungs are fighting to compensate for what her failing body can no longer do. Her fingers and toes begin to turn cold and faintly bluish, a sign her blood pressure is dropping, that her heart can no longer deliver oxygen to the far reaches of her body. Her kidneys are failing. The attendants notice she produces hardly any urine, and what does come is dark and cloudy. She moans often now, quiet sounds she cannot control. The attendants dip cloths in cool water and press them to her forehead, her wrists, her throat, trying to soothe her. The water warms instantly against her burning skin. They whisper prayers. They tell her she must stay strong for her son. They lie, telling her she will recover soon. But the fear in their faces betrays the truth. They have seen this before. They have seen women die slowly, painfully, helplessly, consumed by the fever that comes after childbirth. They know Jane is heading the same way. Henry is informed again. Again, he does not come. October 21st. Jane slips further into delirium. Her thoughts are no longer her own. She hallucinates, seeing things in the shadows, gripping the sides of her bed as if trying to hold on to the world. She talks to people who aren't present. Sometimes she thinks she hears the baby crying. Sometimes she thinks Anne Boleyn is in the room. Sometimes she calls out for her mother. The attendants try to keep her comfortable, but nothing helps. Her abdomen is too tender to touch. Her skin burns under their hands. Her breathing becomes uneven, fast, then slow, then fast again. Her heart is racing to keep her alive, beating harder and harder, yet the rest of her is failing. Toxins spread through her bloodstream, poisoning her organs one by one. The infection is everywhere. Her blood, her lungs, her kidneys, her brain. Late in the evening, as Jane lies half-conscious, Lady Rutland makes a decision the others are too afraid to make. Jane has not seen Edward since the moment he was removed from her after birth. 11 days have passed. Jane may not live to see another morning. Lady Rutland quietly sends for the infant prince. They bring Edward into the chamber. He is tiny, wrapped in fine linens, with a soft cap covering his head. The attendants hesitate, unsure whether to place him in Jane's arms. The fever in her body is so strong it radiates outward like heat from a stove. But Lady Rutland insists. If Jane is dying, she should at least hold her son once. They lay Edward gently against her chest. For a moment, just a moment, Jane seems to come back to herself. Her eyes open with surprising clarity. She looks down at the tiny bundle in her arms, and her face softens. Her cracked lips tremble as she tries to smile. Her hand, shaking violently, reaches up to touch Edward's cheek. She stares at him as if memorizing him. as if trying to fix his face in her mind. It is the last clear moment she will ever have. Minutes later, the fever pulls her under again. Edward is carried away. Jane will never see him again. October 22nd. Jane begins to experience what the attendants describe as the struggle of death. Her breathing becomes erratic, gasping, intervals of rapid breaths followed by terrifying pauses. Her body is shutting down. Her skin is mottled, pale in some places, blotchy in others. Her pulse is barely detectable. Her stomach is distended and tender. She cannot keep her eyes open, but she cannot fully sink into unconsciousness either. She floats somewhere in between, trapped. Throughout the palace, life continues. Servants carry trays, courtiers whisper, musicians practice. Henry gives orders. A prince has been born. England is jubilant. The country has what it wanted. The Queen, who made it possible, is fading away. In the late hours of the night, someone finally sends word to Henry that Jane is close to death. This time, perhaps because protocol demands it, perhaps because he fears the judgment of others if he does not appear, the king comes. Sometime after midnight, Henry VIII enters Jane's chamber. The attendants bow, step aside. The lantern light flickers across his face. He looks at his wife. Jane lies motionless, except for the faint rise and fall of her chest. Her hair is damp, clinging to her forehead. Her skin is pale and waxen. Sweat beads along her temples. Her lips are cracked. Her eyes flutter open for a second, but she does not seem to recognize the man standing beside her. She breathes in shallow, rattling gasps. Henry watches her for a short while. No one knows what he thinks. Guilt? Fear? Regret? Or simply irritation that the mother of his heir is slipping away faster than expected. What is known is this: he does not stay long. He does not hold her hand. He does not stay by her side. A few minutes later, he leaves the chamber. Jane is left with her ladies. She continues to gasp weakly for air, each breath sounding like her body is fighting a losing battle. She will not survive the night. October 24th, 1537. Just a little before dawn. Jane's breathing is no longer human. It is shallow, uneven, breaking into long pauses where her chest does not rise at all, making the attendants hold their breath in fear. Her skin has taken on a greyish tint, the final colour of a body losing its battle. Her limbs are cold. Her lips are bluish. Her pulse is thread-thin and almost impossible to find. Her eyes, half open, stare into nothing. She is barely there, suspended between life and death. The fever has consumed her. The infection, now coursing through her bloodstream, into her organs, her lungs, her brain, has done its work. Jane is beyond pain, beyond fear, beyond awareness. Her body is shutting down piece by piece. Her mind flickers dimly, like the last glow of a candle struggling before it goes dark. Around 2 a.m., Jane Seymour takes her final breath. It is soft, barely audible, a tiny shudder that travels through her chest and then releases. Then, nothing. The attendants wait, watching, hoping to see another rise of her chest, but it never comes. Jane is gone. She is 28 years old. Word spreads through the palace slowly at first. Servants whisper it. Ladies weep quietly. Courtiers murmur with shock. And then the news reaches Henry. The king weeps loudly, publicly, dramatically. He declares that his heart is broken, that he has lost the love of his life, that no queen will ever compare to Jane. He orders the entire court into mourning, black clothes, cancelled festivities, church services, prayers. He commands that Jane be honoured above all his other wives. He insists that she is the only woman he truly loved. But behind closed doors, the truth is uglier. Henry did not sit by her bedside as she slipped away. He did not comfort her. He did not fight for her life. He did not insist on better treatment or more physicians or any desperate measures to save her. He simply let her die. And when she was gone, he made her death into a performance, one that polished his image and rewrote the story. Jane is transformed from a woman into propaganda. Servants begin preparing her body. There is no understanding of metabolism or tissue decay. There is only tradition. A queen's body must be preserved long enough for a proper state funeral. That means evisceration. They cut her open from sternum to pelvis. They remove her intestines, her stomach, her liver, her heart, every organ that would rot quickly. These organs are placed separately into a lead container. Jane's torso is filled with spices and cloth. Her body is wrapped in layers of waxed linen. Finally, she is placed into a lead-lined coffin. Henry insists that the coffin be displayed for weeks at Hampton Court, so the court can attend daily masses for her soul. Hundreds of candles burn around her. Courtiers file past the sealed casket, whispering prayers. Musicians play soft hymns. Priests chant. The room becomes heavy with incense, wax, and solemnity. Henry appears at some of these services, his face grave, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief, letting the court see how devastated he is. But in private, letters begin to move quietly between courts. Portraits of foreign princesses are requested. Diplomatic feelers are extended. Henry is already looking for wife number 4 before Jane's funeral even takes place. November 12th, 1537. Jane's funeral is held at Windsor Castle, at St. George's Chapel, the same place where generations of royalty will be buried. The procession from Hampton Court to Windsor stretches nearly a mile. Hundreds of people dressed in black, horses draped in velvet, nobles carrying banners, clergy chanting, the sound of slow, thudding drums echoing along the road. Jane's coffin, heavy, cold, lead-lined, rests on a hearse drawn by 6 black horses. Henry does not walk behind the coffin all the way. He joins only for the final stretch inside the castle grounds, where everyone can see him. He walks alone, deliberately, head lowered, one hand clutching a folded handkerchief. It is all part of the performance. The king must appear heartbroken, must show England that he loved the woman who gave him a son. He must look like a grieving widower, not a man preparing to replace his wife within months. Princess Mary, the daughter of Catherine of Aragon, is named chief mourner. She leads the procession, stoic and composed, burying her father's 3rd wife after having already mourned her own mother. Elizabeth is too young to attend. The funeral is elaborate, expensive, designed to cement Jane's image as Henry's perfect, saintly queen. She is lowered into the vault beneath the floor of St. George's Chapel. Her lead coffin settles into the dark. In the centuries that follow, her body will never be moved. She remains there, silent and sealed. Years pass, decades. Henry marries again, and again, and again. 3 more wives after Jane, one annulled, one executed, one outlives him. But Henry orders that when he dies, he must be buried beside Jane, because she gave him a son, because she fulfilled the one duty he valued most, because she died at the perfect political moment, leaving him with the image of a tragic widower and the male heir he desperately needed. Henry dies in 1547, bloated, diseased, likely suffering from diabetes, gout, and chronic infections. He is lowered into the vault beside Jane, his coffin placed next to hers. Their bodies remain side by side, long after the politics that bound them have turned to dust. More than 3 centuries pass. In 1888, workers at Windsor open the vault during chapel renovations. They find 2 coffins, Henry's and Jane's. They open Jane's. Inside, beneath remnants of cloth and lead, are her bones, fragile, pale, and almost weightless after 351 years. Strands of her hair, still faintly golden, cling to the remains of her skull. Nothing else remains of the woman who died screaming while her husband celebrated below. The vault is resealed. Jane is left in the darkness again, beside the man who let her die. Years pass, centuries pass, and the horror that killed Jane Seymour keeps killing women long after her bones have turned to dust. Puerperal fever becomes one of the leading causes of maternal death in Europe from the Middle Ages through the 19th century. Women go into childbirth healthy and hopeful, and within days they burn with fever, slip into delirium, then die in agony. It strikes queens and peasant women alike. Jane Seymour was only one of countless victims, but no one understands why it happens. Doctors blame everything except themselves. They blame bad air. They blame milk corrupting in the breasts. They blame sin. They blame women for being too emotional or too weak. They blame God. They blame fate. They blame anything that allows them to avoid the one unbearable truth. They are the ones carrying death from one woman to the next. Then, in 1847, more than 300 years after Jane Seymour died, a man finally sees what everyone else is blind to. His name is Ignaz Semmelweis. He is working at the Vienna General Hospital, a massive institution with 2 maternity wards, one staffed by midwives and one staffed by physicians and medical students. And the numbers make no sense. In the midwives' ward, the maternal death rate is about 2%, still horrifying by modern standards, but considered acceptable in the 19th century. In the physicians' ward, the death rate is 10, 15, 20, sometimes 35%. Women beg on their knees not to be admitted there. Some give birth on the street, hoping to avoid being taken inside. They are terrified of the doctors. They call the physicians' ward the slaughterhouse. Semmelweis is disturbed. Why are women dying in massive numbers under the care of educated doctors, but surviving under midwives? He studies everything: room temperature, airflow, bedding, diet. He interviews the staff. He observes births. Nothing fits. Nothing makes sense. Until one day, a physician friend of his cuts himself while performing an autopsy. Days later, the doctor dies, with symptoms identical to the women dying of puerperal fever. A horrifying realization dawns on Semmelweis. The physicians are performing autopsies in the morning, cutting open corpses, handling rotting organs, diseased tissue, decomposing blood. And then they go straight to the maternity ward and deliver babies. They do not wash their hands. They do not wash the instruments. They go from corpse to living woman with the same bare hands. Semmelweis understands instantly. The doctors are transporting death, not metaphorically, literally, from the morgue to the maternity beds. He orders a radical change. Every physician and medical student must wash their hands with chlorinated lime solution before touching a patient. Mortality plummets. Overnight, women stop dying. The death rate drops from 35% to under 2%. Semmelweis has discovered the truth. Puerperal fever is caused by contamination, infection, invisible particles of decay transferred from one body to another. He has solved the mystery that killed Jane Seymour. He has found the cure. And the medical world destroys him. Doctors refuse to believe they are responsible for the deaths of their own patients. They are offended. They feel insulted. They insist that a gentleman's hands are always clean. They reject Semmelweis's findings, mock him, humiliate him, sabotage him. Without institutional support, he grows increasingly emotional, increasingly desperate. He writes furious letters, accusing doctors of murdering their patients by refusing to wash their hands. He is right, but his anger becomes too loud, too uncontrolled. In 1865, his colleagues lure him to a mental asylum under the pretense of visiting a new treatment facility. When he steps inside, they lock the doors behind him. Semmelweis realizes too late what has happened. He fights the guards. They beat him, restrain him, throw him into a cell. He dies 2 weeks later, at age 47, possibly from injuries inflicted during his violent capture. 20 years after his death, the medical community finally accepts his ideas. But by then, tens of thousands more women are dead. Their deaths were preventable. Jane Seymour's was preventable, but the world refused to listen. Imagine Jane Seymour hearing this story. Imagine telling her that a simple act, washing hands, would have saved her. Imagine telling her that the fever burning her body was caused by the contamination of unwashed fingers, dirty cloths, filthy instruments. Imagine telling her that the agony, the delirium, the slow suffocation of her organs as infection consumed her blood, all of it could have been avoided. Imagine telling her that doctors knew nothing because they refused to learn. Picture Jane on the night before she dies, barely conscious, her skin cold, her breath shallow, the fever creeping through her brain, her chest rising and falling like a weight is crushing it. She can hear something faintly, faint music, faint laughter, the echo of celebration from below. Henry's feast in honor of their son, the son she delivered with her own torn body, the son she held for only minutes before he was taken away. She dies believing nothing could have saved her. But something could have. A bucket of water, a bar of soap, a clean cloth, a few seconds of hand-washing. That was all. Instead, she suffered alone, forgotten in a sealed chamber while life went on without her. And centuries of women would suffer the same fate, dying in maternity beds across Europe, their deaths written off as God's will, bad luck, female weakness, fate. It was never fate. It was negligence disguised as medicine. Semmelweis saw the truth. He understood before anyone else, but he died before the world believed him. And Jane Seymour, the queen who died screaming while her husband celebrated, never knew that she was not abandoned by God or cursed by destiny. She was killed by ignorance, killed by arrogance, killed by a system that valued her son's survival infinitely more than her own life. Her story becomes not just a Tudor tragedy, but a symbol of the countless women used, spent, and discarded because the world chose not to protect them. Picture Jane Seymour lying in her chamber 3 floors above Henry's celebrations. Picture her breathing in shallow gasps, her body burning from infection, her mind slipping between worlds. Picture her hearing the echoes of the music, the laughter, the footsteps. She can't see them, but she can hear everything. The feasting, the wine cups clinking, the distant cheers for the newborn prince. The prince she nearly died to deliver. The prince she will never truly meet. The prince whose existence is already more valuable to England than her own life ever was. And now picture what she knows in those last moments. She knows she is dying. She knows the fever is not stopping. She knows her body is failing. She knows Henry will move on. She knows that in a few hours she will be gone, and the world will go on without her. Jane Seymour dies believing she did everything right. She was modest. She was obedient. She never challenged Henry. She gave him a son. She gave him the heir he had destroyed 2 queens to get. But nothing she did saved her. Because her worth was never measured by her kindness or her loyalty or her gentleness. It was measured by what she could produce, and once she produced it, she was expendable. Jane Seymour was not the only woman destroyed by this system. Queen Catherine Parr, Henry's 6th wife, survived Henry, outlived him even. But the moment she gave birth to her daughter Mary in 1548, she developed a fever. 4 days later, she was dead. The same infection, the same agony, the same preventable death. She was 36. Queen Isabella of Castile, Catherine of Aragon's mother, died exhausted by pregnancies, miscarriages, stillbirths, and the endless cycle of childbirth that destroyed her body. Anne Boleyn suffered multiple miscarriages, each one a political catastrophe, each one a step toward her execution. Mary Tudor, Henry's daughter, became so desperate to produce an heir that her body created phantom pregnancies, her belly swelling, her breasts changing, her symptoms mimicking pregnancy so convincingly that even physicians were fooled. Twice, Mary prepared birthing chambers for babies that never existed. Twice she was humiliated when nothing came. Women bled for dynasties. Women died for alliances. Women suffered in silence so men could write the histories that erased them. And Jane Seymour stands at the center of that truth. Not because she was the most tragic, but because she was the one whose tragedy cannot be romanticized anymore once you see it clearly. Henry VIII loved the idea of Jane, the quiet, compliant woman who did not argue, did not challenge, did not fight him. He loved the illusion of her. But he did not love Jane, the person. If he had, she would not have died alone. If he had, he would have fought for her life. If he had, he would have been by her bedside. Instead, he threw feasts while she burned with fever above him. When the news of her death reached him, He played the grieving widower, the tearful king, the heartbroken husband. It was convenient for him, politically useful, emotionally flattering, publicly cleansing. He ordered a magnificent funeral. He declared Jane his one true wife. He insisted they be buried together. But beneath the performance, the truth never changed. He didn't save her. He didn't try. He didn't care enough. Because Jane Seymour was never meant to survive. She was meant to deliver, and then she was meant to be replaced. Edward VI, the son for whom she died, survived only 15 years. A pale, sickly boy from infancy, plagued by chronic weakness, respiratory infections, mysterious illnesses. Some historians believe his traumatic birth left lasting damage. Others think he inherited Henry's syphilis or congenital health problems. In 1553, he died of tuberculosis, coughing up blood until his frail body could endure no more. So what did Jane die for? Not for a long, stable Tudor dynasty, not for a strong male heir ruling decades. Her sacrifice produced a boy who lived 15 years, then left England on the brink of religious chaos. When Edward died, the throne passed to Mary, the daughter of Catherine of Aragon, whom Henry had tried to erase. After Mary came Elizabeth, Anne Boleyn's daughter, the daughter Henry barely acknowledged, the child he once dismissed entirely. Elizabeth ruled for 45 years. So in the end, the Tudor dynasty was not saved by the son Jane died for. It was saved by the daughters Henry tried to forget. What remains of Jane today? A portrait painted after her death, showing her serene, angelic, flawless. Nothing like the trembling, feverish, skeletal woman who died in agony. A few strands of her golden hair found in her coffin when it was opened in 1888. Bones. Dust. A tomb beside a man who allowed her to die. But there is something else that remains. The truth. The truth that history tried to soften. The truth that storytellers tried to romanticize. The truth that Jane was not a gentle fairy tale queen, but a woman who was used, spent, and discarded by a system that saw her body as a political tool. The truth that she died screaming while her husband celebrated. The truth that the infection that killed her was preventable. The truth that the world let her die. Tonight, when you think of Jane Seymour, don't remember the portrait. Don't remember the myth of Henry's beloved wife. Don't remember the sanitized version printed in textbooks. Remember the fever. Remember the darkness of the birthing chamber. Remember the sound of laughter drifting up from below. Remember the pain she endured for a son she never got to raise. Remember the silence of her last moments. Remember the women who died like her. Queens, commoners, mothers, daughters. Remember that history has never been kind to women. And the truth is so much worse. Jane Seymour didn't die peacefully. She died in agony. She died alone. She died expendable. And for nearly 500 years, the world pretended otherwise. Now you know the truth. And once you know it, you cannot unknow it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.